Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about some of the biggest glaring holes for the big time contenders in college football going into 2024. But now it's time for Hot Take Thursday, and this one is kind of a doozy. So, NIL has been a big topic of conversation, especially this week, going through the NIL roundtable and all of the different things that have been happening around the sport. And I want to start all of this by saying I am in full favor of NIL opportunities for athletes. I am in full favor of the transfer portal and letting kids find the school that will either let them play or find where they really belong and where they're really happy and kind of can develop as a person the best. So I'm not against any of that. So the player power, I'm all for. I just think we've created a lot of power for the players without a lot of guidelines for them to wield it the way that they should. So NIL, as we all know, was thrown into this mix with not a lot of guardrails, not a lot of rules or regulations, or just not a lot of vision, really, from the NCAA, because a lot of states forced their hand, and they were way behind on it. It's created a lot of problems, and I think it's a lot of problems that have disenthused a ton of fans. So NIL has kind of created a recruiting world where a group of coaches can walk into your living room and talk to your mom, your dad, you, and your siblings and tell you some things that might not be true. And it's not necessarily that they're going in outright trying to lie to this kid or be distruthful in any way, but there are some promises that they make that sometimes can't be fulfilled. I mean, we saw it with Jaden Rashada when he was getting recruited by Florida. He claimed there were some promises they made in the NIL world that couldn't be fulfilled once he stepped onto campus, so he found his way over to Arizona State. So a lot of this stuff has created a atmosphere where, since it's the Wild West, since there are not a lot of rules around this, the coaches and the recruiters and all of these people that, run the college football world have taken full advantage, and they've used it in such a way that it's kind of, I don't want to say take advantage of the players, but definitely using a certain amount of them knowing what's going on, but the players not, to their advantage. And it's something that has hurt a lot of players in this recruiting cycle, and especially in the transfer portal, which I'll get to here in a second. But players should have full control over their future. I fully believe that. I think there is no reason that they should have to, ride out 4 years at a school if they're really unhappy there, or if it's not the best thing for their career or for themselves. So I fully want them to be able to make the decisions they want, whether it's the transfer portal or NIL or anything like that. But I do think we gave them all this power, and there's not really an idea of what the landscape looks like. So all of the decisions they're making, they're not really sure if they're the right decisions. They're not sure if they're even okay decisions to be making in this new world, because there are so many question marks around it. So there's a lot going into this, and the transfer portal has been something that a lot of fans have taken big time exception with. A lot of fans are not into the transfer portal. They think it is a huge problem with college football. I'm all for the transfer portal. I think it's a great thing for these kids to, go and find where they need to be. But at the end of the day, they had a rule in place for a time that said you can transfer penalty-free one time before you have to sit for a year if you want to transfer another time. They did away with that rule because, again, they felt like players should have full autonomy. I mean, coaches have full autonomy to do what they want, so why shouldn't players? Which is an argument that I wish I had a good rebuttal for, but I don't. So that is definitely a big part of this, and I fully understand why that decision was made. But I think there is some type of problems going on, especially tied to NIL in regards to the transfer portal, that have created a lot of problems for these kids. So I think them being able to transfer whenever they want is not the problem. The problem is more the ability for these coaches of teams that they could be transferring to, being able to essentially reach out whenever they want. Obviously, there are certain periods where they're not allowed to. They're not allowed to until they're in the portal. I think me and you, we both know that's probably not the case. There are probably a number of happenings behind the scenes that we do not know about. I'm sure there are a lot of student athletes that are gearing up for practice or something that are getting texts from other coaches, and it's not something that we can have happen. It's not something that is good for the sport. It's not something that's good for the kid, because we had this idea for such a long time that it's going to be great for these players when they have all this power to make money through NIL, and they have the power to go wherever they want in the transfer portal and make all these decisions for themselves. And that's all well and good. The power itself is not necessarily the problem. The system under which the power is being distributed is a big problem, because you have the power to make those decisions. You don't have the knowledge really to make those decisions, because the NIL world is all over the place. So this kind of brings me to my maybe second hot take of this one, but we need someone to step up. And it might be a single individual, it might be an entity, I don't know, but someone needs to step up and start making concrete change, because at the end of the day, the further this goes on, the more kids that get left behind. There are a number of kids that jump into the portal looking for a big payday or looking for playing time, and they end up finding themselves just studying psychology at the school because they didn't get an offer from anyone. They didn't get a chance to play their sport at any other school, so they're left to be a normal college student now. So there's so many different pitfalls in this that someone that understands the sport, someone that is at the forefront of the sport, needs to be the one to kind of step up and be the forefront of this movement. And Nick Saban seemed to try to. At the NIL roundtable, he had a number of things to say about NIL and the pitfalls that come. He shared a very interesting story where Miss Terry essentially said, all these kids care about is money. Why do we do this anymore? And while I don't necessarily disagree with a young kid who is trying to make it to the next level, wanting some money from this business, it does create problems for coaches and for players. So Nick Saban obviously is one of the biggest names in the sport. He is someone that has spoken ad nauseum about paying athletes. He has been a big fan of revenue sharing for a very long time. He has been at the forefront of paying these student athletes for a very long time. So there were a number of people that saw the quote that said, all the things I've loved in the sport over the last 50 years are gone, and took that to mean that he doesn't want the kids to make money. And that is not even remotely what he said. If you listen to the rest of the comment, he is a huge proponent of kids getting paid. He just wants them to get paid in a system that makes sense. And I think that's something that would be better for him, it would be better for the sport, and it would be better for the kids. So it would take a little bit of power out of their hands in terms of they would probably have to sign a contract to stay at a school for X period of time, whether that's 2 or 3 years. They would probably have to, be a little bit more bound to a school and not have quite as much freedom. But at least they would know the system that they're working under. At least they know that the money is coming in. At least they know what the money would be, because I'm sure there have been people that have had very varying months of NIL revenue that have come in and have struggled because of it. Because a lot of these kids that are being presented with a lot of money early on in their lives. I mean, I'm a very young kid. I was a college kid not too long ago. And I'll tell you, I would have, if someone offered me, a couple $1,000s to do something for a brand deal, that money be gone pretty quickly. So there is the pitfall of, yes, you're giving these guys the ability to go make their own money, but there is variability in what that money can be and what that money is going to look like month by month or year by year. So there are a lot of pitfalls. And Nick Saban is someone that is doing something that not a lot of people have been doing over the last however long in this sport, especially around NIL, which is just trying. This is a complicated issue. There is no two ways about that. There is no right answer to NIL. I am very far from having any type of answer for NIL that makes everyone happy, to be totally honest, because it is a very convoluted issue. It makes very little sense on the surface because of the lack of rules and regulations. But at the end of the day, there's a guy in front of us that knows the sport better than anyone. He was the sport for a very long time. He dominated it. He knows the players better than pretty much anyone in the sport. He cares about the sport, which is more than I can say about some of the people making big-time decisions in college football right now. And he loves the players. And I know some of you might object to that. I promise you, he would not be in this business for as long as he had, and his players would not speak as highly of him as they do if he did not love his players and care about his players. So my point mainly being in all of this, someone is trying to step up and at least get us 1 inch down the road. Let them do it. I think there are a lot of fans that are hesitant because it is Nick Saban, because he was the mean old Grinch that took over the sport for some time, that they're forgetting we need to fix some of these problems. And 1% better is still better than where we are, right? We don't need to fix all of this all at once. We don't need to create a comprehensive plan that fixes every single problem we have today and consequence that could come forward and have this incredible setup starting tomorrow. But we need to start taking steps towards that. So let Nick Saban speak. Listen to what Nick Saban says, because he knows what he's talking about. And then if we want to try it, let's try it. Like revenue sharing, let's try it. And I think that's the future of the sport. But my point mainly being, there are so many issues with this sport. There are so many hurdles that we're going to have to get over the next little bit, that when people step up to the plate and try to give you answers, don't just write them off. Don't just, kick them to the curb or say, you're just being bitter, or you don't want players to be paid, or X, Y, and Z. You could say a number of different things. But at the end of the day, college football needs people to step up and start doing things good for college football. And I trust very little people on planet Earth to do that than Nick Saban, because he is someone that loves the sport, loves the players, has been around the sport, has more knowledge about the sport than anyone maybe on planet Earth. So he is someone that we just have to lean on at this point at this point in time. We have to take what he says, take it seriously, and then if, we want to implement it. If it doesn't work, go back to the drawing board. But at the end of the day, start trying things, because the longer we don't try, the longer we, say this is a problem, but, when we come to actual solutions, throw up our hands and say that's not the right solution, the longer these kids get taken advantage of, and the longer these kids are in precarious situations, and the longer that these coaches are going to start leaving the sport that we love so much. There have been a number of coaches that have left. Nick Saban, this definitely played a part in him retiring when he did. I think he still had juice in the tank, but he was just tired of the way that things were working. Jay Wright, another great example from the men's college basketball space, he left because of this new era that we're in. He just wasn't enthused by it. So he's someone that was a big part of college football, won 2 national championships, or college basketball, excuse me. So all of these guys, they know what they're talking about. They know who they are. They know the sport. They know the players. They know the pitfalls of all of this stuff. So when they step up and try to give a solution, let's just listen, try to implement the solution. If it doesn't work, go back to the drawing board, because that's what all of this is about, is taking that one step forward and then taking another step forward and then another step. So it's going to be a long battle. NIL is far from being fixed by any means, but at the end of the day, we finally have people stepping up, actually trying real solutions, actually putting themselves in front of Congress or in front of the NCAA or wherever he needs to be. Nick Saban is finally stepping up to the plate, and I just hope that we all listen and we all at least try to implement some of the ideas that he has put out there, like revenue sharing, because I think those are the people that we need to be listening to in a college football world where it's run by a lot of people that we shouldn't be listening to, but we have to. But I'll leave it at that. I'll leave that segment there. So that'll do it for this edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. We again are presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a ton to us, so please remember to subscribe and leave a positive review. It makes a huge difference for us. Also, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all of the social media pages for all the content and updates throughout pretty much every sport you could think of. If you are a wrestling fan, we got that covered. If you're a baseball fan, we have that covered. So tons of really good people doing incredible work here. So definitely check out all of those pages. But thank you once again for listening, and I will see you guys tomorrow.